So we're back here in the studio. We finished cleaning the roaster a couple days ago. Mostly the chimney, which is like some of the metal piping up there. The buildup of coffee chaff, which is like the skin and some of the particles that shed during the coffee roasting process. Those get sent up that pipe and over time start to build up sort of this residue. Just kind of have this weird drill brush that you like put up there and you can knock all that out. So we just did that on Monday, and so today we're gonna roast a few batches just to make sure that the airflow is improving. So hopefully we roast some coffee today and that all works out. The other exciting thing that we're doing today is we're gonna be cupping some coffees or tasting some fun coffees. Well, yeah, fun coffees. Fun. I'll explain. When you're roasting coffee, there's so many factors to keep track of. And there's so many variables that you can change in small ways to have big impacts on flavor. But unfortunately, you don't really know if the changes you make are having an impact on the flavor unless you do some kind of A/B testing, some kind of blind taste test, knowing that you controlled the other variables too, so that the variables you're isolating are actually the thing that made these coffees taste different. So what we have here is we have a couple coffees. We have our house blend, the Velvet Blend, which we just changed one of the elements of that blend because of limited coffee availability on the market. So one, we're obviously tasting to see how that that new coffee is affecting the blend. But the thing we're really tasting for is what happens when you roast the same coffee to the same final temperature, but that roast takes a different amount of time. What we did here is we have two of our house blend velvets. We roast them to 406 degrees before you drop them into the cooling drum or cooling tray and cool them down. And I have one that was roasted in, it's hard to read, one that was roasted in 11 minutes and one that was roasted in 11 and a half minutes. So I also did a similar thing for the Ethiopia Kambata, which is one of our single origin coffees. These are a lighter roasted coffee. So instead of being roasted to 406 degrees, these are roasted to 396 degrees. So your final temperature is going to have a lot to do with how light or dark your coffee tastes, but also the development time. That is how much that coffee is roasted at a certain point and how long that takes, right? So both of these Ethiopia Kambatas are roasted to 396 degrees. One was done in 10 minutes flat. One was done in 1040. So we have our guesses. I think 1040 is going to taste sweeter, a little bit more roasted. I fear 10 minutes on our roaster, might be a little too light for what we're going for. We don't know. So we're going to taste test to see. What we're trying to figure out here is what does 30 extra seconds of development time do to a coffee? And we will take you around for that tasting and you can see our reactions in live time. And yeah, should be a fun experiment. That's kind of, I love doing this stuff. And sometimes I think, man, if this is just part of if I could do this all the time, as part of my livelihood, like that would be incredible. So maybe someday, but for now, I'm excited to do it today. Excited to take you, kind of with us. And yeah, let's roast some coffee. I don't know how easy it's going to be to hear me, but whatever. This little knob up here changes the airflow that's going out of the roaster and up the chimney. So obviously the more open that airflow is, the more air flows through and out of the roaster. If you have enough momentum, more airflow will cook the beans faster because more air is moving through that coffee. But you'll also lose thermal stability as more of that heat escapes. And when that chimney has buildup on it, one second, we got to change the gas real quick. Bump that up. So what happens is when that chimney starts to build up with residue and all that stuff, when you open the airflow on the roaster, the airflow is being constricted by that buildup, so it makes it really difficult to control the temperature of the roaster. Because, for instance, when you head into first crack, which is a really important part of the roast, you usually want to open your airflow 100% of the way, maybe 95% of the way, depending on batch size. And when your chimney has buildup, well, the air's not flowing like it would normally flow. Your rate of rise, of temperature rise, it will stay pretty high. It won't begin to drop off. And you kind of need that drop off in temperature and thermal mass so that you can slowly taper off the roast into the end of the roast. If you can't do that, what happens is the roast just keeps going faster and faster. You blow through the end of the roast time, and then you don't get as much control and as much development of flavor in the roast. So you'll taste this in coffees that if you go to a coffee shop and you taste a medium roasted coffee, but it somehow still tastes like grassy and vegetal. Sometimes that just means the roast was too short, that they had the same end temp, but they didn't have enough development time to really develop that flavor, to caramelize those sugars and all that. So what we're doing here is we're in the beginning of the roast. We're about 3 minutes into the roast. As we approach first crack, which for us is about 8.5 minutes at 380 degrees, kind of coming out of that point, I'll be able to see, am I able to control the airflow like I used to, or does it still feel constricted? So hopefully after a few roasts, we'll have a better sense of what's going on. So typically I like to hit 300 degrees at about 5 minutes. And then from that 5 minute point, that 300 degree point, up until we hit that 380 first crack point, which is a really crucial moment in the coffee roast, sort of building the thermal mass of all of this coffee over that first, for us, 8.5 minutes. And then at a certain point, that coffee has so much energy, it begins to disperse that energy. So instead of heat coming into the coffee, the heat begins to come out of the coffee, and we use that thermal momentum to carry us through the rest of the roast. So we don't use as much gas, as much heat. We kind of take that almost out of the roast, and we let that momentum kind of carry the development of flavor through. So right now it looks like we're a little bit behind on time and temperature. So I can sort of account and sort of make that up in small ways. If you throw too much heat into the roast too fast or for too long, the roast will run away from you. And then if you don't add enough, your roast can stall, where basically the rate of rise lowers so much that the temperature, instead of climbing, will start to drop. We're gonna keep an eye on it over a few roasts, make some small adjustments. I think for the next roast, I will just use more heat earlier to kind of hit those time markers appropriately. So our roaster is not as fancy as some other roasters, in that currently, until we pick a computer system and hook up all the probes and stuff, we're really just using the rate of rise. I forget what I was saying, but we're about to go into first crack, and we are a bit behind, 45 seconds or so, but we're still going to be able to monitor how the airflow is working based on the momentum of the roast, how it feels, how the temperature changes after this first crack moment. So come on, you can probably hear it still. You can hear that cracking. And at this point, the gas is all the way out, the air is all the way out. A few notes from that last roast, just as I'm thinking things through. First thing that I noticed is the airflow is really good. I think we cleaned the roaster really well through the day. I felt like I had lots of control. I felt like when the airflow was fully open, it was doing exactly what it should do. It was pulling a lot of air through the coffee beans. The roast did not go incredible. you know, a lot of this stuff is very small. Like it's gonna be delicious coffee. Some small things. The beginning of the roast was behind, just kind of going in that first 5 minutes of the roast. It's just like the temperature was behind by about 15-20 seconds. So to compensate in this part of the roast now that's going on, I just kind of upped how much gas was going into, or how much flame was going into the roast. So hopefully that will kind of speed things along. I'll check that in another minute. This time I want to kind of back off the gas a little more consistently and open the airflow a little more consistently into that first crack, and then pay attention to the rate of rise afterwards to put the gas back in at a good time. I'd love to see this roast finish at 11 minutes and 30 seconds at 406. So let's see if we can make that happen. So yeah, you'll see just a few seconds behind. I mean, not much at all. And now I'm going to start tapering this gas down. I'm going to take this to 2.5 on the burner pressure. We will open the airflow just a little bit. Let's see what happens. So the next mark I'm looking for is we've crossed that 300 degree threshold. Now the next thing I want to hit 300 degrees at about 5 minutes. And then I want to hit 350 degrees, because this is the point. At 350 degrees, we're going to start taking down the burner pressure, or the fire amount, to use a weird term, made up term. We're going to take the burner pressure down a lot starting at 350. We're going to really start tapering down how much heat we're putting into this coffee, because the heat is going to be building to that breaking point, that first crack. So yeah, so I'm looking for 350 degrees at 7 minutes. I'll check it at 6 minutes, and if it's right below, you know, halfway, I'll know I'm on point. Yeah, we'll see. I think we're still going to be a little bit behind, but I find it's better to be a little behind. It's easier to catch up, or yeah, it's like safer to be a little bit behind in your roast than too fast. It's really hard. It's like pushing a boulder down a hill, right? Like once it gets going, once the momentum takes it, there's almost no getting it back. So yeah, I'd rather be a little behind and each roast kind of inch closer and closer to where I want to be than push something too far and, you know, have a roast that's pretty bad, right? Going into that first crack moment, we're usually at about 3 to 4 second rate of rise, and then I usually will let that drop down to 6 or 7 degrees per second before I start adding gas back in. I find that's a good time. I'll even close the airflow too a bit so we're not losing temperature as fast. And then that's a good place where I can really control the roast. If I need to finish it sooner, I can bump the gas a little bit. If I need, you know, a little more time, I can keep the gas a little low. For me, it seems to be a good temperature or a good point at which to make some of these adjustments. This roast is going really well. We're almost at the end. I feel really excited. We hit sort of all the markers that we needed to, so making that small adjustment of the gas in the beginning and then just keep an eye on the rate of rise to the end really helped. This one is going to finish pretty much on time and on the proper temperature, so I feel really excited about that. And now it's just a matter of replicating all those variables on the next batch or two. And then Tim should be here in 20-30 minutes, and we'll roast a little bit more, and then we'll cup some of these coffees and taste them. You're picking up.
Oh.
In my mind, this one tastes lighter than that one.
I agree. This one has a little more deeper.
Yes.
This one kind of stays on your tongue longer. And on the back, like the acid. Mm-hmm. So like when you start adjusting, what, 30 seconds? Is that the difference?
30 seconds, yeah.
I mean,
I think if you do the math on development percentage, so the way you calculate that is full roast time, and then you take your roast time from first crack to end, and you divide those.
27%.
So
it's a 5% degree difference, like 5% development difference.
Exactly.
which is feels pretty significant because even on our sample roaster, it usually gives you a range of like 3.
Yeah. What is that? It like has like a vibrancy and like a more of a fruit basket. The other one is a little less.
It's like I want this one to have more sparkle and I want this one to have more fullness.
Mm-hmm.
So the one on the right that I think has a deeper, rounder flavor is 1040. The one on the left, which has more acidity, 10 minutes. I think practically it makes me wonder, like, okay, if I feel like a roast, especially on a single origin, is going too fast, and it's going to end at like 10 minutes, 396, and like if I have enough familiarity with that coffee, is it smarter to be like, okay,
Just drop it
or do I just go 1 more degree or 2 more degrees? You know, sometimes you just gotta switch it up. We just wrapped up a day at the studio. Very fun, very productive. I like days like this. A lot of times, you know, when you own a business or you try and scale something, most of your time is spent in operations. But for today to be mostly about the craft of roasting and tasting and evaluating and discussing, yeah, it feels really good. You gotta remember that stuff, you know. Yeah, so it's cool. Very cool. My major takeaways: continue to learn, continue to experiment with development percentage, have the intentionality to pull samples as I'm roasting, wait 5 days, let the coffee rest, and then cup it with somebody, or even just myself. You know, I think even recording was helpful because it made me kind of do it in stages, and it made me articulate things better so people could understand. The next thing I would say is if you are in the coffee industry, make points to taste and to learn about what you're selling and what you're making. Even if you aren't like the head roaster or in like charge of, you know, green coffee acquisition or whatever, like it's still important, you know, to learn, and you make your shop or your roaster better by asking questions of, hey, like, what temperature do we usually bring this coffee to? Have you tried other temperatures? Have you tracked the development percentage? Could I stop in someday and taste different ones with you? And I think those are my main takeaways. You know, experiment more, learn by doing, and then, yeah, implement, make it a regular thing. I think that's something that Tim and I will have to talk through is like, how can we make this something we do often without it feeling like such a big thing to organize? Yeah, because it's very important. It's very important to do that, to pick new coffees, to pick how you want to roast them, to troubleshoot things. It's all extremely, yeah, important because things change all the time in coffee. As coffee ages, as you replace the same coffee with a new harvest year, as you change blends, as coffees become newly available or newly unavailable, it's just so dynamic. And not to mention, you're not even considering like how long the coffee's resting for to impact the flavor. So it's crazy to me. But yeah, it's also really fun. It's like a big puzzle, you know? But yeah, so that's a bit of what today's looked like. I'm going to go and edit this and have my tea. And yeah, if you have any roasting tips or resources in the next coming months, we're going to try and, you know, basically start using a roasting software on the coffee roaster by installing the probes and all that, which should be fun, should be interesting. I feel very nervous because I don't like working on stuff like that. Like I don't want to break it. But yeah, so leave me any questions, any comments. Would love to hear your feedback, your opinions. And yeah, if you're roasting any good coffees that I should be aware of, would also love to hear that. Buy a bag, come by the shop sometime, and I will talk to you soon. All right, bye.